Hello, welcome to an episode of Classic Literature Thoughts, the podcast where we explore reviews, opinions, and ratings on classical literature and help readers find books through book related reflections. I am your host, Andrea Mendoza, and in today's episode, we will be doing something different than we usually do. Instead of speaking with a professor, an author, or a literary scholar, we will be talking with Aurora Williams, an everyday classic reader. Aurora will be sharing with us her personal experience and relatable experiences with classic books, along with honest and thoughtful reflections of some of the books she's read so far. Thank you so much for joining us today, Aurora. How are you doing?
Thank you for inviting me to today's episode. I am so excited to be here and talk about some classic books I have recently read.
We're glad to have you, Aurora. We would like to hear your personal experiences when interacting with these timeless books. But first, we would like to know what inspired you to pick up your first classic book.
My father is actually an English professor at Harvard and recommended classic books to read when I was around 10 years old. These books, like The Secret Garden and The Adventures of Robin Hood, were actually really engaging and interesting to read, and I just couldn't stop reading them.
That's very interesting to hear, Aurora. There's a website called Brightly where parents can read book recommendations for their children that keeps them engaged, connected, and growing. The books you mentioned and many more can also be read by beginners who wish to read classics that are still relevant today and have enjoyable topics and stories.
I now have children of my own and use Brightly and a few other blogs to learn more about classics that my kids and I can read.
That is so beautiful, Aurora. I'm glad you and your family have had a great experience with classic literature. Let's talk more about your current experiences with classic literature. Can you share one of the most memorable reading experiences with a classic novel?
Yes, of course. There is a reason why many classic readers recommend Jane Austen. I read a few of her books when I was in my late teens. I loved exploring the Penguin Random House website for articles recommending books and authors when I was a teenager and ran into an article that described Jane Austen's novels and background, which intrigued me to read some of her famous works. I have continued to read more of her less famous but still highly recognized books to the present day and have loved the timeless themes.
Thank you so much for sharing, Aurora. What would you like to say to listeners who feel intimidated to begin their journey in exploring classic literature?
I understand that many can feel intimidated to start classics, but I am so grateful that I had an environment that exposed me to these books and access to help when I had trouble understanding some concepts and themes, but there are many resources that I still used and continue to utilize that help me gain a greater appreciation for authors like Jane Austen. Anyone can read the classics and enjoy the topics and stories embedded within these pieces of work that had the ability to influence the lives of many in the world today.
You're right, there are thousands of authors who have positively impacted the lives of many, and beginners can read these enduring works that are beautifully written and simple to understand. The Wildflower Journal shares how beginners should dive into classics with diverse stories and environments with the hope of the text leaving a lasting impression on the reader.
Exactly, anyone can appreciate a classic book and see many beautiful timeless themes, characters, settings, and stories.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective of the classics.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun talking about something I love so much.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode with Aurora Williams. Make sure to subscribe to our blog to read more interviews, reviews, and opinions focusing on classic books. Next week's Classic Literature Thoughts episode will be an interview with a Harvard professor, so make sure to tune in. Thank you for listening.